Joining me as ever is the one, the only Joseph Kotrie-Monson. Joseph, lots of, I think, quite big stories. I want to start off with this one. A woman who killed a pensioner in a queue. It was a row in Welwyn Garden City. She's been sentenced. This was an 82-year-old woman who had Alzheimer's. I beg your pardon. She had dementia. She became confused at the bank counter and held people up and thought she hadn't taken money out and what have you. Kotrie-Monson, in retaliation, because this confused woman, I believe, lashed out with her handbag or said something, and this Kotrie-Monson gave this elderly woman a shove. The woman fell, had quite a few injuries, and a short time later passed away. There's the sentencing, which you'll tell us about, but also I think it's interesting what the judge said about the bystanders. So just take us through that case. I thought, wow, for a judge to say that, wow.
A lot going on in this. Well, Joseph's judgments, we occasionally, don't we, talk about these tragic, sad cases. This is definitely one of them. Good evening, Trisha. Good evening to everyone at home and on the move. The facts in this case, you've already alluded, not particularly straightforward, not a straight attack per se, if I can say it in those terms. You have Kotrie-Monson, the defendant, kind of complaining vocally because this elderly woman who clearly is having some kind of problem with the queue in the bank or with the bank teller, trying to understand what's going on over a transaction and not doing very well. And it's taking a very long time and everyone's waiting as a result. Of course, we've all felt that frustration and we've all thought, hang on a minute, they should have more bank people here, or someone should be taking control of this to help this woman. This woman was clearly disadvantaged, if not just by virtue of her age, 82 years old, but also on the fact, whether it's Alzheimer's or dementia, certainly somebody who deserved sympathy at the time, rather than the impatience of Richmond, who was making sarcastic comments, although she claimed that she was making them about the bank staff rather than anybody else. But what happens at the end of that first interaction is the elderly woman actually, and you can watch it on YouTube, the Daily Mail have put it up there so you can judge for yourself. She uses her bag to kind of swing and strike at this younger woman. Not very hard, but I guess technically it's an assault in law and levels some kind of personal insult at her, we are told. But then Richmond, she pushes the woman over very aggressively. And that CCTV really tells a story. She ran a trial and pleaded not guilty on the basis of self-defense. And you can almost see it working because she was struck first, technically. But you look at that video of this young woman violently pushing this old woman who falls to the floor with an immediate thud with force. It's violent and it's purposeful. Now, Claire Davis Casey, you might remember, she's the pioneering barrister at Garden Court Chambers, know her reasonably well, having briefed her, who did the Sally Challen case, often represents vulnerable women in serious proceedings. She did her best in mitigation. Of course, she didn't win the trial on behalf of her client, Miss Richmond, but the woman received a suspended sentence. And you think, whoa, hang on a minute, somebody's died here. It's a violent death of an old person, and you know how that person's relatives who feel protective towards her must feel. Can that be the right result? I have to say, looking at the facts of the case, well, it's retaliation for an assault, you know, on balance, probably right, even though it's not self-defense. And the defendant, well, she lost both parents as a child and has lost custody of her children as a result of this case. So, yeah, a difficult decision for the judge. You've asked me a specific question, though, I think, about...
The Judge Michael Simon actually issued a criticism of Lloyd staff for failing to diffuse the situation. They said she'd been in the bank before, this elderly woman. Yeah. She clearly had a problem with dementia. And that's that thing of everybody just standing around and letting a situation develop. And for the judge to actually call this out.
Yeah, called it out and say, I want to put these people on notice that they need to look at this, because while he couldn't guarantee this was avoidable, he said that if if proper systems were in place to make sure people were looked after and properly, customers of all types were recognized with different issues earlier, then this might well not have happened. And I think that is right. And I think it's also probably a symptom, not just at this particular bank, but in the way that we access services in general. Okay, maybe when you go into a branch, you're not treated like as much of a number as you are when they say on the phone, your call is important to us. And then it's so important that you're on hold for an hour and a half. But at the same time, kind of this is what happens when you treat people like cattle, when you treat people who you should have at least a commercial responsibility to as a bank or whatever other type of provider. Tensions raise when you treat people badly. And when queues go up, our time is precious. Our time is under threat like never before. You have two parents working. You have so much expected of us. You have short-term contracts in the gig economy. Every second counts. We're contactable by employers by text message and by email.
And as you say, if they had training just to spot someone with, dementia, they knew she was coming in. They could have had some training.